Hi there, and welcome to another JavaScript Mastery video. Today, I will share with you a revolutionary new tool that has just been released. If you've been in web development for some time now, you're probably aware of the fact that a lot of our work revolves around data. Reading data, writing data, manipulating data, and displaying it in the browser in a way that makes sense. In most cases, that data is provided by REST API endpoints. In the past, to test REST APIs before hooking up the UI to accept the data, typically you'd have to either query the API through a terminal's command line or use a graphical user interface like Postman or Insomnia. If you haven't heard of Postman, it is an API client that makes it easy for developers to create, share, test, and document APIs. Postman is a great tool when trying to dissect RESTful APIs made by others, or test the ones that you have already made yourself. It offers a sleek user interface with which you can make HTTP requests without the hassle of writing a bunch of code just to test out the API's functionality. Now, why do we need applications like Postman or Insomnia? Let's say I wanted to make a GET request to fetch famous quotes from an API. If I wanted to test a GET request to an API endpoint without using an application like Postman, I would have to write out a whole new route and a function to perform the request. Then I would have to specify with more code what I want the response to look like, and finally, I would have to print out the response to the console or provide some other way of actually viewing the response. But let's be honest, doing all this to simply test an API's functionality is unnecessarily tedious and time-consuming. With Postman-like tools, tests like these are much simpler. All I have to do is plug the route into the address bar, select the getResponse method, add my API keys in the header section if needed, specify that I want the response in pretty JSON format, and hit send. Then I get the response data in easy-to-read JSON with a status code of 200 confirming the GET request was successful. It's that simple. Now, there's nothing wrong with Postman. It works as expected and it's pretty straightforward and intuitive to use. But the problem with Postman is that it's yet another application outside the context of our favorite editor, and that switching between apps takes time and effort. And as much as possible, I'm always trying to avoid switching between apps, so integrating features into my code editor is always welcome. But now, life has just gotten simpler. We no longer need those extra applications like Postman or Insomnia. We no longer need to exit the Visual Studio Code to test any APIs. This is all possible because of the new plugin created by RapidAPI, called RapidAPI Client. It works precisely like Postman, but it's integrated into Visual Studio Code, which is great. The more things we can do inside VS Code, the better. And the best part is, in this one video, you'll learn how to use RapidAPI Client to its fullest potential and become a better and more efficient web developer. So, let's dive right in. As mentioned in the intro, today I'll teach you how to use a revolutionary tool that has just been published today. The RapidAPI client replaces all similar standalone applications, lets you send HTTP requests, and view the response directly in our beloved Visual Studio Code. Now, enough talking, and let me show you how you can use it in practice. There are two ways in which you can use RapidAPI client: the no-code way and the code way. First, we'll briefly go over the no-code way just to explore the functionalities, and then we'll quickly switch to the code way, as I'm sure that's what you're more interested in. Number 1, no-code way. To get started with using the RapidAPI extension, you can first open up an empty Visual Studio Code window, and then you can click the link down in the description that's going to lead you to the RapidAPI Client Visual Studio Code extension. The only thing you have to do from here is click Install. It's going to ask you if you want to open it in Visual Studio Code, and that's exactly what we want to do. And right there, you can click Install one last time. There we go. The extension is installed globally, and just like that, on the left side sidebar, you should be able to see the RapidAPI icon. There we go. Since you'll be installing it for the first time, in your case, you might also see the welcome screen right here, guiding you through the process. But don't worry, I'm going to guide you through all the steps right here, right now. So first thing we have to do is press this little icon right here that says sign in. It's going to ask you if you want to sign in. And one more time, you'll have to allow this to sign in. And in my case, that worked instantly. You're signed in and you can start using RapidAPI. If you've used RapidAPI before, then you should have no issues whatsoever. It should work instantly. If you haven't created an account before, it's going to prompt you to create it, so no worries there again. Now, right here, you can see that we have one sign-in request. So I think if we just reload our window, that sign-in request is gone, and now you can see we can only sign out because we are already signed in. And with this, we are ready to start using the RapidAPI extension. What we can do first is find a random API on the internet. One of the most popular fake APIs for testing and prototyping is the JSON placeholder API. Again, the link is going to be down in the description. If we scroll down a bit, you'll be able to see that we can try it out immediately. It is a publicly available API. And there are many different endpoints that we can use. For example, we can go to /posts to fetch posts, /comments, albums, photos, to-dos, and users. If you haven't used this before, essentially it is an API with a lot of mock data. Essentially, it's just going to have some dummy data like IDs, some titles right here in fake Latin, and bodies as well. So let's try it out and let's use it immediately right inside of our Visual Studio Code. The only thing we have to do is copy this URL right here, go back to our Visual Studio Code, and add a request. This is going to be the request number 1, and I'm going to paste the URL and add the /posts. And with that, you can click send. Immediately, if I zoom this out a bit, you're gonna see that we're getting a full API response back right inside of your Visual Studio Code. Isn't that crazy? Now that we have all the posts, we can of course create a name for that request, something like get posts, and we can say fetch 100 posts. There we go. And now we've just tested one API endpoint, and we can immediately see right here in prettified JSON what we're getting. So now inside of our code, we know what data we're working with without console logging it, without creating additional requests, and so on. So this is quite perfect. And we can also pass additional headers, queries, bodies, or auth headers. Now that we have our first request, let's also add a second. So I'm just going to click right here, and let's fetch something like users. So again, I'm going to paste the same URL. That's going to be /users. And now we can click send. And there we go. We have the full data for 100 users. Again, I'm going to say get users and simply say fetch 100 users as the description. Isn't that crazy? Now, another phenomenal feature that we can use is to generate TypeScript interfaces. If you've been working with TypeScript lately, this is going to be incredibly useful for you. To create an entire interface that's going to be automatically generated for us, the only thing we have to do is click this little code icon on bottom right. And this is going to generate a new file containing all the interfaces. As you can see, it immediately understood that we're working with a user. Now you can rename this to user if you want to, and it picked out all the properties that the user has. So for example, it has the ID, name, username, and so on. And you can notice that the RapidAPI client picked that out instantly. And we have all the types right here. So if you're working with TypeScript, this is going to be incredibly useful. Now, we've properly consumed this API. And let's even say that we've made some changes to it. So it's going to return some altered data. You want to publish this API so that you can use it later on inside of your other applications. How can we do that? Well, RapidAPI made it incredibly easy. You can open up RapidAPI client from the sidebar and click this icon right here to create or open a project. Once you click it, we can create a new project right here. And we can create it on our RapidAPI personal account. We can enter the name of the project, for example, JSON placeholder, and press enter. This is automatically going to create the project, and it's even asking us if we want to sync our local project to the new JSON placeholder project, and yes, we absolutely want to do that. There we go. Now it says JSON placeholder online, the requests are here. And the best thing about that is that now if you go to rapidapi.com/studio, again, the link is going to be down in the description. And if you log in with the same account that you've logged in into your Visual Studio Code, now it's going to automatically sync your API, and all of the endpoints that you create are going to be right here. That means that you can run some tests, which we're going to explore later on, and you can also list your API on RapidAPI Hub so that everybody else can consume it as well. This is something that I'm going to show you how to do once we deploy our own real API, and that is going to be in the second part of this video, which is coming up right now, and that is using the RapidAPI extension, but now with coding. So let's jump right in. Number 2, Codeway. To start with our Codeway, we're going to create our own actual API. Or rather, we're going to use one of the APIs from my previous videos, the currency converter. So to start learning how you can properly test your real APIs using the RapidAPI client, let's go ahead and create a new project. So you can click this icon right here and click Create a New Project. We want to create a RapidAPI personal project, and the name is going to be Currency Converter. There we go. It's going to immediately create it, and it's asking us if we want to sync our local project to the currency converter, and no in this case, because we haven't yet cleared the old one. There we go. So now we switch to the currency converter project, and we are ready to start adding requests. But before we do that, let's go ahead and create a new empty folder on our desktop. I'm going to call it currency_converter. And we can simply drag and drop it right into our Visual Studio Code. Once we have it in there, we can create a new file called index.js. Since this video is about teaching you how you can most efficiently create, publish, and test your APIs, we don't necessarily need to go through the entire process of creating an API. For that reason, down in the description, I've created a simple API we can use to test things with. So you can head down. Inside of the GitHub gist, you'll find a really short, 25 lines long API. This API has 2 different functions, and then finally a function that calls it to test if the APIs work. The first function fetches the countries from the REST countries API. More specifically, it fetches them by the currency code that we provide. And then the second one converts the currency. So in a sense, this is an API that is a currency converter, and also it tells you in which countries can you spend the money you convert your currency to in. And just so you don't have to find some additional API keys for currency conversion, I just simply used a math.random function, so the numbers are going to be random. Now that we have our API here, we can go to View and then Terminal, and we can run npm init-y. This is going to create a generic package.json. Since we're using the import syntax right here, we'll have to add an additional line that's going to say type, and that type is going to be of module. That's going to allow us to use the import syntax. And we'll also have to run npm install Axios, because we're using Axios to make API calls. There we go. And now if we want to run our API once, what we can do is run node index.js. There we go. 20 USD is worth 99. This is going to be Swiss francs, and you can spend these in following countries: Liechtenstein and Switzerland. So now we know our API works, but it's not really an API as of yet. It's just a series of 2 function declarations and then 1 function call. We're not hosting this anywhere. We cannot call it again. We just called it one time by running our code. So what we can do to turn this into a real API is install Express. So we can run npm install Express. There we go. Our Express is installed. We can simply import it right here. Import Express from Express. And then we can say const app is equal to Express, and then we call it as a function. Now we have to create at least one endpoint. So let's do app.get. That's going to be just the / endpoint where we have a callback function. And inside of Express, callback functions have a request and a response. And there we always have to return something. So it's going to be res.send, and we want to send some JSON. In this case, we want to send the output of the convert currency function. So before we send any data, we'll have to call the convert currency to get the information we want to send back from the API. We can add the async keyword right here because we want to call this function from our app.get. We can say const. What are we getting back? We're getting back the message. So we can say const message is equal to, and then that's going to be the same call to our API, but we want to add an await in front of it. In this case, we're working with dummy data, but soon enough, we're going to test it using our API client right inside of our Visual Studio Code to make it work for dynamic parameters that we can pass to it. And now we can res.send the message. With that, we no longer need this function call right here because we turned this from a function call and a single file to an API. But for this to be an API, there is just one final part missing, and that is app.listen. We need to make this API listen somewhere on a specific port. In this case, we can do port 5000. We need to have a callback function where we're going to simply console log and say something like server is listening on port 5000. Great. And with that, we've properly created a simple API. But now is the time that we test it out. So what we can do is we can open up the RapidAPI client and we can start by creating a new request. The request name is going to be something like get exchange rate. And inside of here, we can simply say localhost 5000. So we're just making a get call to the / route. And before we click send, we have to open up our terminal by going to view and then terminal. And now you can run a node index.js, just as we've done before. This is going to make our server run on port 5000. And just before clicking send, let's simply add the HTTP : / to it to make it into a real URL. And let's click the send button. There we go. 350 milliseconds, we even know the time, and we can see the response that we got back alongside some additional info. This is coming from localhost 5000. It is of a status 200 OK. We can see the response size, also the request we've made, and finally the response. The response currently is getting in web format. It is like an HTML that we're getting back, but that's not what you really want from an API. So right off the bat, we can go back in our code and we can say res.json instead of res.send. This is going to make sure to return the data in the JSON format. Now for the changes to take effect, we can stop this from running and then run node index.js one more time. Now if we rerun our request, you can see that now we get a JSON tree or a JSON text, which is much easier to read, and we get back the text in a nice format. Of course, in here we just have one string, but usually you'll have objects with real data, so you'll be able to easily read through them right here. Great. With that said, now let's add some additional functionality to our API so that we can modify the currency we want to exchange from, currency we can exchange to, and then the total amount. To do that, we can pass some query parameters to our API. So we can say const, we can destructure the from currency, the to currency, and the amount coming from rec.query. These are going to be populated once we make our API call. And now we can simply exchange the static variables with these newly created variables, from currency, to currency, and the amount. Now what we can do is we can go back to our exchange rate And now we don't have to append queries like this. That's going to be from currency, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, from currency is equal to, and then we need to specify USD, for example. You don't have to do that here. You can simply use the dedicated query section where you can add query parameters, which is incredibly handy. So let's do something like from currency is equal to USD, to currency is equal to CHF for Swiss francs, and then we can add the amount, which is going to be something like 20. That's going to be it. Now let's rerun our server by pressing Ctrl C and then running node index.js again, and let's click send. As you can see, we get back our headers, and inside of our info, we can see that the query was automatically populated for us, and we got back the response. 20 USD is worth 170. This number right here is random, but we can verify it's working by switching the currency to, because then it's going to switch the countries where we can spend that money at. So let's do something like HRK, which is the national currency of the country I'm from, Croatia. Let's simply run it. And you can see that we can only spend this currency in Croatia, which means that we just successfully tested our API. Great. Now we can document this. We can say get exchange rate, and we can also say something like accepts. That's going to be from currency to currency and amount. Perfect. Our API is currently accessible only on our local machine. We can call it on localhost 5000, but now let's deploy it so that people can use it around the world. Let's close our RapidAPI client and let's open up our terminal. We'll be deploying our API using Heroku. Heroku is a free-to-use tool that allows you to easily deploy your APIs. The link to download it is going to be down in the description, and it's available for all operating systems. Once you download it, we can start with the setup. Let's add one additional file to our file tree, and that file is called procfile, like this. Inside of there, we can specify the web and then node index.js command. This is the starting command that's going to be ran. Then we can run git init to initialize a git folder. We can create a gitignore file, so .gitignore, and then add /node_modules to it because we don't want to push all the node modules when we are deploying our application. Now, first command that we're going to run is going to be Heroku login. If you install Heroku properly, this should work without any issues. And we can press any key to open it up in the browser. Now you'll have to log in. There we go, you can log in, or if you're new to Heroku, you can go through the sign up process. Once you're logged in, you're gonna see this screen, and then we can go back to the code. Now that we're logged in, we can run Heroku create. Now we can run git add, git commit -m first commit, and then git push Heroku master. This is going to push and instantly build your API. So now you can see that your API is building. And finally, you can run Heroku open to open the API in the browser. And if we open it, we're unfortunately going to get just one application error, and I quickly figured out what is the reason. Instead of just deploying to localhost 5000, we have to use the automatically generated Heroku variable, and that's going to be process.env.port, like this. Now we can simply go through the process of pushing the changes one more time. That's going to be git add dot, git commit -m, second commit, and then git push Heroku master. That's going to rebuild our application, and hopefully this time we're gonna see our API live. Let's run Heroku open one more time. And alongside changing the ports, let's also change our endpoints just a bit. So in here, we're always accepting these from, to, currency, and the amount. But what if a person doesn't send them? So what we can do right here is say if no from currency, or no to currency, or no amount. In that case, we can simply res.send, and let's res.send something like, please provide all the required parameters. That way, we're not gonna try to make an extra request, so we can put this in an else statement. There we go. Now let's structure this properly, and let's go through the process of pushing this one more time. That's going to be git add dot git commit dash m. Let's do something like second commit, and then git push Heroku master. Now our application is going to build again, and it's going to be redeployed. And let's run Heroku open. And as you can see, our application loaded on our newly created endpoint. And finally, what we can do as well is ping it from our RapidAPI client. So let's copy this newly created URL. And back inside of our code, we can go to the get exchange rate and now replace this URL right here with the newly created Heroku URL. And let's click send. There we go. As you can see, we got back the response. This is phenomenal. Now that we've created and tested our API, deployed it as well, it's time to publish it to the RapidAPI marketplace so that other people can access it as well. And if you remember correctly, all the work that you do in the RapidAPI client also automatically gets synced to the RapidAPI Studio. So if we go to our RapidAPI Studio, there we go. Your currency converter is going to be right there. There might not be an image right here, but don't worry, we're going to add that together later throughout the video. Now, before adding all of the necessary hub listing information, I've switched to the test tab because I want to show you that you can do automated tests via RapidAPI Studio. So let me show you how you can do that in just under a minute. First, we're going to click create a test. Let's give it a test name, such as automated test. You'll automatically be re-navigated to that test, and we can add our first step. You'll have plenty of options to automate all of your tests, but in this case, let's use a simple HTTP GET request. Let's go to our URL, and that URL is going to be the link to our deployed API. Let's just go to the home route without passing any variables. And let's click save and run. As you can see, the test succeeded. We can click right here to view more information. So we got 200 OK from our API. But of course, these tests can be much more detailed. As we saw before, you can test absolutely every single part of the application. You can check if something is equal to something, or if the API is returning the right logic based on the right parameters. But that's it when it comes to testing. Now let's go back to our hub listing to add all of the information about our API. But of course, if you want to get a lot of people to use your API, you have to add general information to it, such as an icon. I found a random currency converter icon. I'm going to drag and drop it. We can add a category. In this case, let's see what would suit it well. There are a lot of categories. In this case, just tool or finance maybe. Let's do financial since this is a currency converter. And in the description, we can say a simple API that allows you to exchange a specific amount from one currency to another. There we go. README, this is optional. The website is optional as well, terms of use. And now what we can do is we can confirm that we own the rights to publish this API. Of course, read the terms of service first, and then we can publish it right here. We also need to add our base URL, which is going to be a link to our deployed Heroku application. Once you add it, you can click save. Our application was going to be successfully updated, and you can scroll to the top. And on top right, you can click right here to view it in your RapidAPI hub. There we go. Published by JavaScript Mastery, updated a few seconds ago. It is live. It is free right now on the RapidAPI hub amongst tens of thousands of other APIs. Isn't this great? Of course, there's just a couple of other things that we can do to tweak it and to make it more usable. For example, we can add an endpoint right here and specify the queries. And we can also add a pricing section so that you can actually make some money out of it. Let's go back to RapidAPI Studio. And let's go to endpoints. Right here, we can add our first REST endpoint. That's going to be exchange currency. And that's going to be just /get. Of course, we are sending some parameters. So that's going to be from currency, also to currency, and finally the amount. We can set some example values, for example, euros, dollars, and then let's do 100. And all of these three are required. And RapidAPI is immediately going to provide you with a clean way of how other people can immediately consume your API. And before saving it, we can scroll up and add a description. I'm going to use the same sentence we used before. And I'm going to click save. With that said, our endpoint is right here. Let's go to monetize. In here, you can choose different plans that your API has, like basic, pro, and ultra. So with the pro plan, let's switch this to monthly, 1,000 requests. And then it's going to be $0.01 or 1 cent per extra request. There we go. And we can also switch this to monthly subscription and set the subscription to $10. There we go. So now we have two different plans. And now let's go back to our currency converter in RapidAPI Hub and reload the page. As you can see, an endpoint appeared right here. We can also see that we have to pass some parameters, and it's nicely telling us what we have to do. And also we have a pricing section so that people can actually subscribe and pay you directly to use your API. Isn't that great? And now if we go back to endpoints, we can click test endpoint. This is going to run our endpoint with the specified parameters. You can see right now we don't quite get back the result, but it's actually good that we reached this point, because now we know that there's just one more thing we have to do to properly publish our API. The issue in our case is that we are returning a message instead of a JSON format, but it needs to be a proper JSON format. So whenever you're working with APIs, you always want to return a JSON. And a JSON is JavaScript object notation. So essentially, it is an object, but it has to have a key and a value. So we can return a message like this, and in the same fashion, we can return a message right here. So message is equal to a message, or a shorthand property looks like this. If we now redeploy this, our API is going to work. So git add, git commit, and then git push Heroku master. Let's give it a minute, and then we'll recheck it inside of our RapidAPI Hub. There we go. Our API was redeployed, and I'm going to click test endpoint. As you can see, now we get back a message right here, and that message contains one string that says that 100 euros is worth 40 bucks. Again, the numbers are random, and then we can spend them in the following countries. Great. With that, we came all the way from the start, installing the RapidAPI client, learning how to use it to test our APIs, and then we also dived into the RapidAPI Studio, which automatically syncs to the RapidAPI client. I've got to say, these technologies by RapidAPI are phenomenal. And with that said, we've came to the end of this video. If you liked it, you're going to love JS Mastery Pro. There, we teach you how to showcase your skills with practical development experience, with even longer and more comprehensive courses. You can choose between Filmpire to master React, or if you want to dive into new Web3 blockchain technologies, you can choose our NFT marketplace application. If you're more of a beginner wanting to improve your JavaScript skills, then the complete path to JavaScript mastery is for you. With that said, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.